Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, Nadeina, how to growth at saas group, serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success. Today with me is Ferdinand, founding partner at the Growth Syndicate, helping B2B founders and professionals achieve sustainable growth. Right on point, like boom, seriously, everyone wants sustainable growth these days. So really happy to see you here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Sure. So I guess I'll start with your background. You have quite a bit of experience anywhere, product, e-commerce. Like you tell it, please.
Yeah, I started dabbling in marketing. I had the chance to intern with a marketing agency when I was, I don't know, 14, 15 years old. So I started maybe even younger. So got exposed to marketing very early on, but I never really saw it as a career path. So I ended up studying totally different things, history and political science. Um, which is weird because throughout my childhood I was always quite entrepreneurial. We tried to resell our Pokemon cards at school when we were like 6, 7 years old, and got in a lot of trouble. And we tried to sell drinks and snacks in the school later when we were 12. So always had that kind of entrepreneurial side, but I never really saw it as a career. I don't know why, which is weird because my parents are both entrepreneurs, so it should have been kind of a obvious career path. But I went on to study something quite academic. And throughout my studies, I basically got involved in lots of projects, started my first company, got into a more entrepreneurial kind of group of people. And then after spending a lot of time studying relatively academic and maybe more like government oriented sort of vocation, I decided to go full circle and go back into marketing. And this was about 12 years ago. Started in marketing agencies and moved to Amsterdam 8 years ago to get closer to the tech scene because I grew up very much on the fringes of European tech. And yeah, went from kind of agency to trainer consultant at a company called Growth Tribe to actually wanting to get my hands dirty and prove that I can lead teams myself. So I was the chief marketing officer at a company called Recruity. I was the director of marketing growth at a company called 3D Hubs. Both those companies exited in 2021. And off the back of that, I kind of went back into the entrepreneurial space, started my own company, Reveal, which we sold last year. And I think it's been a constant flow of trying something, doing something else, and going back to the thing I did before. So now I've gone full circle, and with the Growth Syndicate, we're actually bringing that marketing thing and that founder thing together by basically helping other companies grow exclusively in the B2B sphere.
That's awesome. That's quite an experience. And I actually really like how you described it, like experimenting with something new, but going back with that experience and kind of applying it back in marketing and growth. And I think it really helps. Like I did that a couple of times. And sometimes I thought, oh my God, it's going to be like totally irrelevant. But then applying all that knowledge from different aspects of business was really a game changer. So, and before doing this episode, what we're talking about the fact that now marketing and growth is kind of being merged with other aspects of business, especially if we're talking about more sustainable lean teams, bootstrappers. So, what do you think? What do you see working with the companies that are smaller? How is this marketing growth role working for them? And is it more of a generalist role where people try all sorts of things, or you still see that people kind of try to focus on one particular thing, if especially if they want to grow and scale a company?
I think what we see with marketing as a whole and growing a business, maybe even in a holistic sense, the tactics, the tools, the way people do things, they're constantly evolving. But kind of like the fundamentals of human psychology, the way we make decisions, how we decide to buy or not buy something hasn't changed anywhere near as much. And I think what we've seen is, back in the day, you had very traditional marketing, which was basically advertising, right? If you see something like Mad Men, that's what we're talking about. It's creating big campaigns, very awareness focused. And back then you couldn't track anything. So you would create a big ad campaign. So you needed to be very confident with what you were launching. And back then people, companies would place quite a lot of emphasis on understanding who they're talking to. So this was particularly true in the B2C space, where in B2C companies would essentially say, okay, you know, our target audience is, people of this age group, this level of education. They watch these TV programs, listen to these radio channels, and you would just, and attend these kind of events, and it would be a very kind of broadcast media style advertising with a very strong focus on who you're targeting. I think B2B companies at the time didn't do much marketing at all. They were very sales driven, and if they did marketing, they had that same concept of, it's advertising, it's awareness driven, it's very what people would call top of the funnel these days. And then about 20, 30 years ago, you had the emergence of digital marketing. And with digital marketing, a few things changed. Number one, you could start doing search-based advertising. So you could actually target people's intent. So it was no longer just a high-level awareness game. It was really capturing people who were looking for a specific product, a specific solution. The other thing that changed is that, with digital marketing, you had a massive scalable kind of pool of potential leads to tap into. There was no saturation. There was not so much competition yet. And you could track better than ever before. So you could essentially run ads on various channels, and you could track how many of those, the people who clicked would actually convert, how many of those who would convert actually became customers. And what we saw is essentially companies shift. And this is kind of a long story, but I think it's really it's the foundation to how I see things. We saw companies shift from this very awareness based marketing to this very lead generation focused marketing. And the reason they did that is because they could. And this coincided with companies raising more capital than ever before, companies being less and less focused on profitability, more and more on growth. And all of that kind of reached a head in the last 5 years. What we've seen in the last 5 years is it's easier than ever to build a company, which means there's more competition in the market than ever before. Tools and technologies around AI make it easier to write copy and create designs and do something somewhat at least mediocre or okay. And what we're seeing is a lot of these channels, everyone does SEO, everyone does SEA, everyone's doing the same things, which has led to a huge amount of saturation. And it's led to a certain blindness amongst audiences. People don't click ads as much as they used to. They don't open emails as much as they used to. They don't read newsletters as much as they used to. And what this has meant is that a lot of companies are having to go back to the roots, because with the change in the funding landscape, with a kind of an emergence of bootstrapping as a trend, and I guess it kind of, bootstrap companies always have to focus on profitability, but now funded companies also have to answer for ROI. We're seeing investors looking way more on the ROI, way more on the return on the ad spend. So what's essentially happening is we're having to go back to the roots, which is if the customer journey is, let's say, from A to Z, you used to be able to kind of jump in a queue, right? Let's say Google Ad is kind of jumping in at, UV quite far along in the customer journey at the end. Whereas back in the day, we had to start at the beginning of the customer journey. And this is what's kind of coming back, that companies can no longer rely just on some Google ads and some outbound sales to grow their business. They need to actually understand the customers they're targeting. They need to build their brand awareness. They need to generate demand. And that is a completely different style of marketing. It's much more long-term. It's much higher ROI, and it is much more complex and much harder to track. So I think that is a very long answer, but it encompasses a little bit how I see companies growing, is this shift almost back to old school marketing, where and brand is more important than ever before.
Sure. Yeah, I think I agree with you here. And one more thing that I wanted to talk to in regard to bootstrap companies and bootstrappers is because we talk a lot with indie hackers, with people who are great developers, and they built this amazing product, and they're in their bubble, and it's highly profitable, and it's an amazing thing that people love, but they kind of pride themselves in the fact that they never spend a dime on marketing. They basically just grow with the community and with the product. And maybe it's good for us, right? Because we know where we could spend to make this thing grow. But what is this sustainable growth? What does it mean for companies? Is it actually trying to hold back on the budget and like not allocate it anywhere? Just let the product speak for itself, or is it actually about finding that place where you could allocate the budget to amplify the growth and maybe even take the product and company to the next level?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think when we talk about sustainable growth, we also like to use the word predictable growth. I think what we see with a lot of companies, and I think everyone who works in marketing will relate to this, that a lot of companies grow because they try different things that work, but they're not necessarily, infinitely, replicable, right? So they'll, they'll try different things that work to an extent, like they'll do like an event, for example, and that's great. But if you do a big event that works really well for you, can you do that every week? Can you do that every month? Probably not. And I think what we see with a lot of companies is that they've done a bunch of things that have helped them grow to this point, but it sometimes feels a bit random, right? Like this is one of the things we talk to a lot of companies about, where they say, well, I got published on this publication, and like I got this PR mention, and it led to like 20 new customers that all spent lots of money, but I don't know how to replicate that. Or I'm running Google Ads on this keyword, it works really well, but I've tapped out the search volume on this keyword, I don't know how to replicate that. And I think that is what most companies want, is a predictable, sustainable engine for growth. In other words, they say, if I do these things and I invest in these things, I'm going to get this out of it. And if it works, I know how to scale that. I know how to replicate that. You see this a lot in kind of funded companies who once in a while get a massive deal, right? They get like let's say their average ACV is something like 4,000, 5,000 a year, and they get a 20,000, 25,000 deal. And they're like, this is amazing. We hit target. Everything's great. But because that one deal is such a one-off, at one of my previous companies, we used to call them whales, that you pull in a whale whilst fishing. And, that's great because that feeds you for a really long time. But can you do that again? Was it like a fluke? And I think the key to building a sustainable engine, kind of sustainable growth, is that maybe you're not looking at whatever gets you the most revenue in one bite, but something that is replicatable, like something that you can do over and over again and that you can scale. And if you take the indie hacker, for example, that's a really good example. A lot of indie hackers, especially, building kind of tools for other indie hackers, other developers, they'll post something on Hacker News, for example, and get a bunch of customers that way. And that works really well. And very often indie hackers are tapping into an existing community. There's a group of people, they hang out on Hacker News, maybe they hang out on some Discord channel, maybe they go to some event together. There's an existing community, and they build something for that community, and the community loves it. The problem is, if that's not your community, that community has a limit. It has a limited amount of members. If that limit is huge, then you don't need to worry. But if that limit is within sight or within reach, what do you do once you've tapped out that community? And I think at some point, if it's a community play, you need to find a way to grow that community. If it's a brand play, you need to build out the brand awareness. If it's an ad play, you need to figure out how are you going to go. And it's rarely one or the other. It's a combination of touch points that you use to reach your target customer. So for indie hackers, there's always that painful moment where the kind of the organic, natural growth has hit a limit. And then it's up to them to decide, hey, I'm happy to just sustain this at this level and move on to a new project, or do I want to scale this further? And then you at some point need to invest in marketing. I don't think that always means ad spend, because that is always the most obvious thing we talk about, is spending money on ads. I think ads can be very effective, and they're very often, Google, high intent Google search ads is often going to be your fastest road to sales opportunities, just because the intent is there and you can target it. But in the long run, investing means, do I do thought leadership on LinkedIn? Do I share content? Do I create YouTube videos? Do I do a podcast? All of these things need investment. If it's not money, it's time. But at some point, even if you want to scale, you want to do things better, you want to do things more effectively, you want to have more impact, you're always going to have to invest. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest myths in marketing. One of the things we talked about to someone recently was, people think something like SEO is free, like search engine optimization. People see it as a free channel. It's not a free channel, because you got to create content, you got to build backlinks, you got to optimize your website. There's tons of stuff that actually requires investment. But I think there's a big difference between investing for something long term that generates demand and paying for leads via something like paid acquisition, paid ads. Those are two different things, and you need to find a good balance.
Absolutely. I think that's the second time somebody here said that Google Ads can be your fastest way to validate the idea and actually get some eyeballs on the product. It was another CMO, so only marketers talk about that. Everyone else is just avoiding.
Yeah, I think, like, imagine you own a store and you have a storefront and people walk into your store. Very often people who walk into your store are looking to buy a specific thing. Not always. Some of them are window shopping, but the people who come in, they might be looking for something. And if you sell software, that's much harder. People don't walk around in the street looking for software solutions. They're walking around in the street like, if you're going shopping for some, I don't know, some clothes for a wedding or something, you're going to maybe jump into 3 4 different stores with an intent of, I want to buy, I don't know, a suit, a dress, or whatever. But people don't buy software like that. I mean, it'd be kind of weird if they did. The way that people buy software is they search on Google, or they talk to their friends, or they post on LinkedIn. And only one of those things is very easy to target. It's easy to target Google ads, because if there's 1,000 people searching to buy, saying like, what's the best CRM for small teams? If you're selling a CRM for small teams, that keyword is for you. But again, that search is going to be limited, and you need to have a plan for when you tap that out. That's very important.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask the question that is due, and also because today I saw Rand Fishkin post on LinkedIn that marketing as we know it is dead. Is growth hacking dead?
I've never been a fan of the word growth hacking. I was part of a company that was a big driver of the growth hacking growth trend in Europe. And I think this idea around growth hacking brought some new perspectives. It really tried to apply lean startup to marketing, right? Marketers used to see themselves as one part of the customer journey, and growth hacking brought in this idea that we need to track data, we need to experiment, we need to test things. It's not about big budget campaigns, it's about validation first and then scaling. But there's a lot of things that come with the word growth hacking that I think are actually very counterproductive. I generally don't subscribe to the move fast and break things culture. I think, yeah, you need to move fast, and you should not be afraid of breaking things, but you should not go out of your way to fail, go out of your way to break stuff. I think that has been overinterpreted, and I think a lot of the growth hacking philosophy rests on quality doesn't matter, it's only speed. And I don't think that's true. I think if you're trying to build trust and you're trying to build a brand, it does matter to do things well. So, like, yeah, I can test LinkedIn ads, but if the copy sucks and the image sucks and everything sucks, then I'm not going to know if it was unsuccessful because it's the wrong channel or because it sucked. And like, that's the part where, for me, I don't subscribe to the whole marketing is dead, growth hacking is dead. Like, the words change all the time, and people love to get into the whole terminology. But there is a way that companies buy, or people buy, companies buy a certain way. There's a customer journey, and you can call it a funnel, you can call it a growth loop, you can call it whatever the hell you want. But the fact that there's people out there buying stuff does not change. How we approach that has to change. Whether we call ourselves, I don't call myself a marketer. I call myself somebody focused on growth, because I believe that growth in a company is reliant on many disciplines and many touch points. But it's semantics. I don't think the semantics matter. I think the most
Yeah.
important thing that people lose sight of is the customer journey exists. Understand that customer journey and think about how you can move people through that customer journey more effectively.
Yeah.
Call it whatever you want.
True.
Just not
True.
growth hacking. Let's not call it growth
Right.
hacking.
I'm going to come up as a LinkedIn nerd, but there was another, in a way I am, I guess. But there was another post that I saw today, and it was something about, a guy was talking, a founder was talking about, well, taking his product live and possibly making a video or something. He was kind of nervous about making it, you know, having it in bad quality or like not really producing a good, nice looking content. And somebody said, "Oh, nobody really cares how your video looks like. Nobody cares like how you look on the video." And I so wanted to support it because like when the product is good, yes, in a way nobody really cares, but they still do. Like you cannot just half-ass, like we were talking about how MVPs, well, you cannot just, whip up a bad buggy product and just put it on the market and have everybody clap. It doesn't work like this. Like you said, it's so much easier now to create a product that some everyone wants a working product, and it's so much easier now to create good quality content that everyone expects good quality content. And I think putting them together now, early stage founders have a bit of a problem in a way that yes, they have to have a working product, but they also have to create good quality content to put it out there and really get the eyeballs on it.
Yeah, I mean, the quality is also, it's not a yes, no sort of, it's not a binary thing in that sense that for me, you can do a raw video with very little editing and it can still be high quality because what you're saying makes sense and the quality is good. So I think that's kind of understanding your audience is really important and who you're selling to is really important. So if your audience is designers, then I think visual design is going to be important. Good visual design is going to be important. But it really depends. I think the line, I think the bottom line when people say, move fast and break things and these sort of things, I think the bottom line is you shouldn't let perfectionism get in the way of doing stuff. And that I totally agree with. I think there is a point where it's good enough, and good enough, I guess the question is just what is good enough? And good enough is that it actually solves a problem for your customer. It actually engages with your customer. So if you like, I give the example of Expandy. I don't know if you're familiar, but Expandy being kind of a LinkedIn automation outreach tool. I mean, they changed it a few months ago, but until a few months ago, user experience wise, it was one of the worst tools ever. Like it was so hard to use. But the reason Expandy was good and everybody used it is because it was one of the only ways to automate LinkedIn outbound without getting banned from LinkedIn. What the under the hood technology was great. The kind of customer facing experience was abysmal. They fixed it since then, so really fair play to them. But that was like the feedback. But the problem they solved was not being the most user friendly outbound tool. The problem they solved was you can scale outbound safely without getting banned, without hurting your reputation, and it was very the process for using it was very clear. So I think quality is it's relative in that sense. You can't be perfect at everything, but you need to solve a clear problem. So to get back to the MVP, my co-founder of my last company coined this term called minimum lovable product. This idea that it's not about being viable, it's about being lovable. But that doesn't mean you don't have bugs. It doesn't mean that there's not problems. That's okay. Like I do believe that if you wait too long to release your MVP, that's not a good thing because you need to get feedback as soon as possible. You need to try and sell it as soon as possible, but you need to solve the problem. And I think that's true of whether it's a video or a piece of content or a LinkedIn post. Does it have to be perfectly polished? No. But does it have to be inherently valuable? Yes. And that's, I think people have a weird relationship with quality. I think a lot of people, their bar for like creators, their bar for quality is very low. It's, right grammatically correct or something like that. That's not quality. Being different, standing out, that's where quality comes from and creating value. And that's something that people still struggle with.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about, sustainable growth and how to actually achieve it. So let's start with you, right? Taking into consideration everything and everyone you've worked with. If you were starting right now, and I really, really feel like starting now is such a hassle. What would you do to, in order to target long-term results, sustainable growth, looking ahead, what marketing channels would you explore and what would be good enough for you to start this imaginary company?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really need to imagine because we started the Growth Syndicate 4 months ago and I'm going through this exact process and I can tell you exactly what we've decided. So I think number one is really very clear ICP and positioning. Everything else doesn't matter until you really know who am I selling to? And not just in like a very broad sense, in a very specific sense, right? We help companies go from 1 to 100 million in revenue. That is the range that we operate in. We don't work with pre-product market fit companies. We don't work with corporates. Number one. Number two, we only work with B2B companies. So we've really nailed down a segment. It's still a pretty big segment, but it's a segment that we know that we can deliver on. And we have a very unique positioning because all of us in the company have taken these kinds of companies to exit. We've done this successfully repeatedly. So we know that that is a focus that we go on. Then, in terms of who do we target, in smaller companies, it's the founders, in bigger companies, it's the marketing leaders. So that's also our audience that we focus on. Now, in our case, we do a bunch of different things. We do services, we do products, we do community stuff. But the bottom line is we said, okay, number one, that positioning needs to be super crystal clear. And then you take it to market, you try it, you test it, and you learn. So we made a first version of our website. All the positioning was super clear. We learned from the market. We're now about to launch the second iteration, which is essentially a slightly more corrected version. So that's number one, ICP positioning crystal clear and very clear messaging, right? If you can be creative, great, but be clear first. That's the other thing we see a lot of creative messaging, but nobody understands what you do. Be super crystal clear. I solve this problem for this person and I'm better because of XYZ, right? That's kind of like fundamental. And actually don't say I, say you. Using our product, you can solve this problem in this way better than anybody, better than with anybody else. Once you have that in place, you then need to decide what kind of company, how you want to scale as a company. We said that for us, we want to do a community play. When I say community, I use it very loosely. So I think when you're an early stage company, like when you're very, very early stage, that there are two things. When you're very early stage, you just need to sell your product because you need people to buy to show you if it works. I think the biggest kind of lie in the space is this idea of get people to try it and play with it. And like anyone who's been in the space for more than 1 year has a lot of friends who can try your product and they're all going to tell you it's great. But it's only when people actually spend money that you actually know that this is something that people want. People are always happy to give positive feedback. They're not always happy to put dollars on the table. And I think that's the most important thing. And the way you do that is two things. You do outbound. So you go out to people and say, hey, I built this thing. And what I found works really well is to say, hey, I built this thing. Could you give me feedback? And if you build something awesome and you get on a call and they give you feedback, if it's relevant for them, they might actually just buy it. So that's kind of the number one is outbound. And the number two is other people's network. You don't have the time to build your own network when you're just starting out. You need to tap into existing networks. So the way that we do that, for example, is we have our own podcast and we feature other people on that podcast. And when they feature on that podcast, they share the podcast. And with every guest, we get 10, 20, 30, 40 listeners more. And that builds up over time. So highlighting other people. And, you can do full podcasts. You can also just do little snippets, jump on Riverside, do a 10-minute chat with someone, post it on LinkedIn, do a webinar or something, but always bring in other people at the beginning because it doesn't help you to just talk to your own echo chamber when you're starting out. You need to bring in other people's network. Those are the two things and the only things that I believe work right at the beginning. After that, it's a totally different game. It's about building your brand. It's about creating demand. It's about establishing yourself as a thought leader. And you can start looking at actual marketing channels. So pre-product market fit, don't worry about growth. Worry about getting 10, 20 paying customers. Well, depending on your ACVs. It can also be 5 if you're an enterprise-focused company. But get your paying customers first. Outbound, other people's network. Once you have that, you have some product market fit, that's when you can start scaling. And that's creating demand by building your brand, by creating thought leadership content. And when I say thought leadership content, I mean actually valuable content that people want. If you want to see companies that nail this, look at companies like Hockey Stack. Content is awesome. User interviews, also content is awesome. And that really helps you grow. And then you can start thinking about paid channels. You can look at Google ads. You can look at Bing ads if you're in an old school environment. You can look at LinkedIn ads, account-based marketing. That all then depends a little bit on your strategy. But I think when you're just starting, you don't need predictable growth. You just need some growth. You just need customers. Once you have that, then it's about building a predictable engine. And that's usually a combination of generating demand, generating leads, generating users, and generating revenue. And ideally, you have a comprehensive strategy for your ICP. And I could go on much more detail to explain how that works, but I think that's the bottom line.
Okay, that works perfectly. And the reason I asked was because recently I was talking to a few early stage founders, and they're they're just getting started. And the question that everyone asked was, should we go into just focusing on one channel, or disperse and try, LinkedIn, Discord, newsletter, SEO, like everything there is.
Yeah.
And
Do whatever works.
right, yes, and that's kind of like the most perfect answer here. Like it depends, right? Like find out where your customers or users or whoever you want to get hang out and go there. How do you decide, right? And it depends. Like I said, it feels like a perfect answer here, but always when you get it as a marketer, you're like dumbstruck. Like, how do you decide? How do you decide for early stage for you where to go, which channel to use?
Yeah, I think at the beginning you don't need to decide. I think that's the point, right? Look, for me, there's a very clear difference between having product market fit and not having product market fit. And I know it's this elusive thing, it's hard to define, but do you have paying customers that you think you can replicate or not? If you have 3 customers and it's like it's your cousin, your best friend, and your dad, then that's not a proof that you can replicate that. But if you have 10 customers where you say, okay, they're kind of the same kind of company, they're using it for the same kind of reason, and I found them the same kind of way, that's a that you can replicate that. If you don't have that, you don't need to make any decision, because you just need to hustle and get 10 paying customers, because the chance that you're wrong about your MVP is incredibly high. Most people are wrong about their idea. Like, most ideas are not sellable. And that's not, that doesn't depend on how good you are at what you do. It's just how it is. That most of the time when we say we're going to build something, whether it's a product, a feature, whatever, chances are we're wrong about something, and it's a pretty good chance we're wrong about the entire concept. And then you put it out, and people will give you feedback, and then you'll fix it. And once you fix it enough, so you'll find a group of people who say, you know what, as it is now, I love this. If you haven't reached that stage yet with your MVP, it doesn't really matter. You just need to hustle, and you need to be scrappy, and you need to just do what you can to get the first bunch of paying customers. Because I think the worst thing you can have is to have like that middle of the line situation where you have tons of people giving you amazing feedback. Everyone loves it. Everyone says it's great. Everyone's offering to test it, but no one's paying. That is a problem, because then you're usually solving a nice to have, and you need to solve a must have problem in order to actually sell, especially in the current market. So if you have people who actually pay for your company, then you need to think about what channel. And there for me, it's never about choosing a channel. If you're in B2B, and I'm sure some of your listeners are not, but that's my area, is B2B. If you're in B2B, there's not an infinite number of channels. You're not going to go on TikTok, and you're not going to send people stuff on Snapchat. You're
And
going
some
to use
people
LinkedIn.
do.
You're going to use Google. Well, some people do, and if your audience is there, great. But for most B2B companies, their audience is on LinkedIn, their audience is on Google, their audience is at certain industry events, and you maybe have then 2 or 3 other channels you can tap into. The what in marketing is rarely rocket science. It's all about the how. How do you go on target Google? How do you do your cold outreach? How do you build thought leadership content on LinkedIn? The how is everything, because for every person that has 20,000 LinkedIn followers and really strong engagement, there's 100 other people doing the same thing but doing it badly. So the how is everything, and the how starts with understanding who are you actually selling to, having a clear ICP, which most companies don't. And it feels like a luxury to figure that out, and you don't need to get it perfectly, but you need to have an idea of, if you have 10 customers and all 10 of them are super different, that's usually not a good sign. So I think the answer to how do you decide is, you don't need to decide, but you need to think about how these people buy and how you're going to get them to your product.
All right, thank you. That's a good one. All right, so another thing I wanted to ask here is, we're talking about that change from growth at all cost to a more sustainable model, and
Yeah.
like, what is it about? How to pivot? It's not like you just shut down your Google Ads, right? This is not me going on the sustainable path. What does it mean?
If you are going down a growth at all costs path, and you now need to shore that up and go towards profitability, or at least some kind of like default alive situation, that is a super 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 hard transition. Because if you're going growth at all costs, chances are you have VC money. If you have VC backing, you need to keep growing. So I don't even know if there is a way that any company can do it. I'm imagining some can and some can't, depending on what your cap table is like, what your investors are like, what your situation is. But let's say none of those things are a factor. If you are spending a lot of money on paid acquisition and you need to scale that back, the number one thing you need to do is accept that there are 2 currencies in marketing. There's money and there's time. That's it. You can spend a lot of money and save a lot of time, or you can spend a lot of time and save a lot of money. There are maybe few exceptions to this, and this is why I don't like the idea of growth hacks, because growth hacks imply you can do both, and you can't. There might be that little silver bullet, that golden nugget that gets you a little bit extra growth, but it rarely is any growth hack or any silver bullet or any golden nugget super sustainable. So to shift to a sustainable model, you need to shift away from super rapid fire, high spend activities to something that is much more top of funnel, generating demand and establishing yourself as a thought leader. Number one. And number two is you need to do outbound sales, because outbound sales is the only direct path that you can take to reach people without spending money, assuming you do it yourself, or you use something like some automation tool. So that is the shift you need to make. You need to shift from capturing people who already have demand to capturing people who don't have demand yet and help generate that demand within them. So people who have a problem but don't know about the problem, people who might need a CRM in 6 months but not right now. You need to build your brand and you need to do different activities. SEO could be an activity, thought leadership on LinkedIn could be an activity, creating an ABM campaign around 300-400 ideal potential customers could be an activity. And all of those things can be done for a lot less money, but they take time. And I think that's kind of the bottom line. If you're going from a blitz scale crazy growth at all costs model, you need to accept that you need to kind of shore up your kind of you need to reduce your team, you need to reduce your burn, and you need to then find more sustainable ways to grow. It's super hard. Like it's almost easier to do it from day one to do it from scratch, but it is doable. It's just you need to really accept that this is a massive shift, because growth at all costs is a totally different game.
True. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I have one story that I really want to highlight here on the podcast in the next month with a founder who was doing exactly that. And I'm really curious how they did it. But I'll definitely share the nuggets from the podcast later. I have a couple more questions, of course, and again, taking into account all the companies that you worked with, what's your favorite success story? Like sustainable growth, somebody that really nailed this path and figured out like what it means for them and what they should focus on.
Yeah, so years ago I worked for a company called Recruity, recruitment tech company, applicant tracking system, essentially software that helps recruiters manage their talent pipeline and their candidates. And I joined Recruity very early on. We were 12 people, and they're an 8-figure business now, something like massively grow, massive company now. And Recruity started with a little bit of funding, which led to investor pressures, which led them to actually, you know, going back to a bootstrap model and staying true, sticking to their guns, staying true to their original ideas. And they bootstrapped their way to massive success. They exited in 2021. And I think that is a massive success story, because Recruiting was really a company that from day one, we weren't scared to spend money to try and do some more aggressive lead acquisition, but we also built a brand, we built a community, and we just had the business almost had friends, like we just had people like users, recruiters that we just collaborated with. We did events with them. We did meetups in our office every 2 weeks. We went to trade shows. We expanded into different countries, and it was very much a value driven approach to marketing. And that really got us from, well, like I said, when I joined we were 12, when I left we were close to 100. um, and that was very much a sustainable growth model, um, which was still ambitious. And I think that's kind of like the thing, like people often think, oh, if I'm going to go, it's either hyper growth at all costs or I'm not ambitious, and that's not the case. And I think Recruity was a great example of that.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many amazing companies that are highly profitable and growing. And I mean, even here on the podcast, we had solo founders, solo employees of the company making like $7, $8 million in ARR. Incredible stories. So yeah, it's not about the lack of ambition. Definitely, it's just a different path. So the last two questions. So far in your journey, and it could be something your personal or a company wise thing. What's so far the biggest win and the biggest failure?
I think the biggest win, I'll say the biggest win is right now with the Growth Syndicate. The Growth Syndicate started with this idea of all of us had done freelance work and consultancy work in the past. And we thought, what if we pool our efforts and build like a big brand that helps companies grow? And we want to do that not just through services, we want to do that through various things. And one of our partners, when we started the business, was, well, still is pregnant. And it was, of course, a contentious thing as a woman who's pregnant to start your business when you're 2 months or 3 months pregnant. So we kind of said to ourselves, we're going to start this. We started in March. So when we launched the business, and we said, we've got basically 6 months to not only get this off the ground, but actually get it running in a way that there's revenue, that she can support herself throughout her maternity leave, that we can find somebody who can fill in for her during maternity leave. So we had to basically have stability, operational things kind of in place, and a good number of customers. And we managed to actually nail that And there's some luck involved, there's some hustle involved, there's some hard work involved. But I would say that's the biggest win, because we've basically built a close to 1 million ARR business in 4 months, um,
That's
by taking all the
wonderful.
learnings from the past involved.
Get a
Which brings me to the
pregnant person on the team. That's the time restraint that's going to really put you in in your
Yeah,
way.
I mean, for us, like the idea of building the business was always to, build a business that allows us to live the lives we want, and I think that was a big part of that. But it just meant that there was definitely a time constraint in getting everything working, and
Yeah,
we did, and we're really happy, and we're super well set up now. We have the teams growing, so that's great. It is a product directly of, I would say, my biggest failure, which was with my previous company. We actually took over a product from an agency. That's how we started, similar to companies like Binder or WeTransfer. They also started that way. So we met these guys from an agency. We took over their product. Because the product already had cost liabilities, we raised VC capital very early when the market was really hot, and we raised a lot of money. And then the market changed and a lot of things changed. And, all's well that ends well. We sold the company last year. And all in all, it was, there's a lot of great things we're very proud of. But we raised too much capital too early, and it became one of the biggest frustrations, stress factors, depressing things for 3 years of my life. And I knew the risks of taking capital early on. I still don't look at this black and white. I think, there are times when capital is good and there are times when capital is not good. And it also depends who you raise the capital from and how you raise it. But I think in hindsight, we broke a lot of what now is seen as like good standards for raising capital. And I would not raise capital before product market fit anymore. That's my biggest learning, and that I would say was a fail, because it caused us a lot of stress, a lot of frustration. Not because we had bad investors, which was not the case at all. It was just, you just immediately have this burden of having raised and having to live up to that. And I always compare it a little bit to when you look at football or soccer, if you have American listeners, that you have these players super young that are then signed for crazy transfer sums, 50 million, 100 million. And that's a huge pressure to live up to. And a lot of players don't live up to the price tag they were given, just because the pressure from having cost so much, you have to be amazing from day one. And that's really hard. And I think young companies that raise a lot of funds, they have that same experience, that there's just so much pressure to deliver so fast. And if you're bootstrapped, there is pressure because you need to survive, but it's a different kind of pressure. There's more freedom, flexibility, and the pressure is only on you. It's not exerted by other parties and stakeholders. So that would be the biggest failure, I would say.
you're right. Good learning, though. I mean, and I'm really happy that you said that
Yeah,
it's still not black and white. And we've been through this journey ourselves with saas Group when we were focused on indie hackers, bootstrap companies only. And we moved on from that because, hey, it's not the either you raised or not. It's the mindset, it's the culture that you're looking for, and it's totally a different game. So the last
absolutely.
question is, and I know we talked about not really going down the hacking rabbit hole, but is there a hack? Is there a hack that you're using? It can be anything. It can be business related, mental health, going through, this turmoil with the growth at all costs, coming back to sustainable path. Anything that worked for you.
It's not really a hack, but the other people's network thing works. Like, other people have networks that are the people that contain the people you want. Like, that is the key, right? If you and then collaborate on content, do podcasts with them, whatever. But tapping into other people's network is so important. I see this because I see a lot of people start to post on LinkedIn like videos of just themselves talking. And if you have a big audience, that works really well because people want to hear from you. But if you're early stage, add another person, because that person's going to share with their audience. They're going to share with others. Yeah, I think that's really the way to go. So the other people's network thing is really the one that I think is a force multiplier really early on, because you can just dip into their networks. Like I said, every week we release a podcast and the guest shares it. And if the guest has 10,000 followers, that's awesome. I mean, we don't choose guests on that basis, but it's just that super relevant people we get access to. That would be my closest thing to a hack I can think of.
That's a great one. I mean, a lot of people don't don't really know. I mean, I'm guilty of that myself. Like when I started, I didn't really understand, like, first of all, why doing it, and second, how do you just go out to a person and like ask, hey, be on my podcast, or like collaborate with me on a
People love
content
to talk
piece?
about themselves,
Yes, yes, it's a
so
good
it's
thing
not
to
that hard.
remember. So thanks for a reminder. I still think that a lot of people don't really understand that concept, or don't really leverage it for their growth. So
No,
good hack. Thanks so much for it, and thanks so much for everything you shared, because you've got great experience, and have a ton more questions, to be honest. But maybe we should do it again sometime, because I feel like growth is something that everyone wants to know more of, and it's not the easiest time to grow a company. So maybe
no,
let's talk
it's
about it
not.
a bit more.
No, thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure.
Sure, anytime, and take care.